Morning, everyone. So great to see you. Please do give me a smile every now and again. It really helps. Great to see you. Some of you will remember the Women's Football World Cup a few months ago maybe. And England were only just beaten by Spain in the final. Well, you might also remember what then happened. Over the following weeks, as the chief of the Spanish Football Association and vice president of UEFA, Luis Rubiales, tried to convince everybody that the kiss on the lips that he gave to one of the Spanish team was consensual. Okay, so he was suspended. But I remember the newsreader's headline that day, which was, "The writing is on the wall." And he resigned the following day. So we are up to chapter 5 of Daniel, and our series on Daniel, Light in the Darkness. So Daniel is semi-retired now, in his 80s, and at the point of our story, and the writing is on the wall for King Belshazzar. So in the Baptist church where I grew up, we always had a text verse, okay? So today, ours is a sobering one. It is this, so look out for it as we get ready to read Daniel 5. It says this, "But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways." Let's turn to Daniel 5. King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink with them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The king summoned the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Then he said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they couldn't read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, whom the king called Belteshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. The wise men and enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and tell me what it means, but they could not explain it. Now I have heard that you are able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, You will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Your Majesty, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the position he gave him, all the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with wild donkeys and ate grass like the ox, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives and your concubines drank from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Here is what these words mean. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple. A gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. Wow. Quite a story, isn't it? Daniel is living in Babylon. He had everything going for him in Jerusalem, didn't he? He had position, privileges, and now living in a foreign land with a different culture. He had a different name. He had to speak a different language. There were different gods. He had to adjust and make decisions about what he was prepared to compromise on and what he just wouldn't budge on. And we've been exploring these over the last few weeks. I wonder if you remember your PE lessons. Happy occasions or no, okay. You can't say that to me, I'm a PE teacher. Anyway, can you remember when the teams were picked? 2 captains, yeah. The best players always pick first, Phil, yeah. And there was one left at the end, only taken with a roll of the eyes from the captain. We all like our first choices, don't we? Second choice is not okay. No choice is rubbish. I love sash windows. I wish I had sash windows in my house. Anyway, I like seeing how people live their lives. And those late summer evenings when the lights are on in the house, but the curtains aren't drawn yet, and you can sort of peer in. I'm nosy, I guess, or maybe you should call me curious. Catching a glimpse a window into how people do their lives, I found fascinating. So today, we're going to catch a glimpse. Let's get a window into Daniel's life. Let's get a window into Belshazzar's life. Let's get a window into our own lives this morning. Maybe you picture Daniel now, in his 80s, an aging civil servant maybe, a long way from home, working for a hostile power and dreaming of Jerusalem and how it could be restored. Possibly he considered the bulk of his life was over, so that he could now glide into some kind of Babylonian retirement. Still going in his 80s. I'm thinking of 66 and I'm done. 2 years seems a long time, doesn't it? But here he is, still going. The second choice world for him still dominated him, even though he was old. Daniel's life, I don't like to say this really, but his life did not get easier as he got older. Hang on in there, everyone. Hang on in there. It's only going to get worse. However, he maintains his faith through it all, and always, we read, spoke with wisdom, tact, and truth. I think that's a challenge for us all. Many of our second choice worlds, they require great endurance, don't they? Huge endurance. Viv Thomas, in his book, Second Choice, shall I persevere with this, or are you, yeah? Oh, yeah, there we go. In his book, Second Choice, Embracing Life as It Is, writes this: if we want to endure through second choice worlds, we must keep on flexing our spiritual muscles. This might mean engaging new ideas and frames of thinking. It will mean developing new relationships with people who do not think like us. In the end, it may well be the new ideas and relationships which bring light into the darkness and show us the way out of the gloom of second choice. At the very least, they may show us how to make the most out of being where we do not want to be. A little bit of background then. I like background. I'm sorry that Duncan's not here because he likes a bit of history, doesn't he? But anyway, I'm going there. This is a window into Belshazzar's life. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar died after a 43-year reign. Pretty decent. After this, his evil son, Merodach, ruled for 2 years. Before he was assassinated by his brother-in-law, Neriglissar, because his rule was arbitrary and licentious, I read. Well, Neriglissar ruled for 4 years until he died of natural causes. His only son, Labor-Osor-Chod, what a great name. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right. Only ruled for 9 months. And he was beaten to death by a gang of conspirators. Anyway, Nabonidus, one of the gang, was then appointed as king. Following so far? Okay, Belshazzar, who we met in our story today, was his eldest son, okay? So that is the history of how he got there, which I think is quite interesting. Now, during the last part of his reign, Nabonidus lived in Arabia, and so he left the conduct of the kingdom of Babylon to Belshazzar, who it seems wasn't doing a particularly good job. And that's why Daniel was told he could be third in the kingdom, okay? Because it was Nabonidus, Belshazzar, and then Daniel, okay? Yep. So, there were armies surrounding Babylon, looking for a way to get into the city. Now, this was going to be a tricky job. Okay, imagine this for a moment. The outer walls were 17 miles long. They were 22 feet thick. That is pretty thick, isn't it? 90 feet high. And on top of that, the guard towers were another 100 feet high. And the city gates were made of bronze. So you'd think they'd be pretty safe, wouldn't you? Safe and secure with their inner and outer walls and their moats. And I think Belshazzar probably thought that he was untouchable. He could do whatever he wanted. Whilst a hostile army was surrounding the city, Belshazzar was partying. Does that sound familiar? Maybe the pursuit of pleasure helped Belshazzar to fight off that and forget the danger that he was around him. Anyway, Belshazzar, a little window. He lost all self-control at the party. He was openly mocking God and used the vessels from the temple in Jerusalem to worship his gods. And so God writes a message on the wall, which catches his attention magnificently, doesn't it? His carefree partying turned to terror at the sight of the hand and the writing. He turned pale, became weak, so very frightened. I mean, his legs were going beneath him. I mean, he was beside himself. Who could tell him what it meant? And as we read, all the wise men were called, but none of them could read it, let alone tell the king what it meant. And that's what we've seen in previous chapters, haven't we? The queen, probably Belshazzar's mother, had remembered Daniel. And so Daniel was summoned. It was interesting that she called him Daniel, actually, which was his Jewish name. Daniel wasn't impressed by Belshazzar. He thought he should have known better. Had he not learned anything from Nebuchadnezzar? But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Forgot that one. What a statement. What a challenge for us too. Do we honor God in everything? Do we? So, what did the writing say, and what did it mean? Meaning, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. God had Belshazzar's number, and it fell short. Tekel, you've been weighed on the scales and found wanting. God weighed Belshazzar, and he came up light. I fear if I got on the scales, although I'd like to be light in one way, I feel like I would be found wanting. Parson, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. God would divide Belshazzar's kingdom. And the word Daniel brought was fulfilled that very night. A mighty army overcame the Babylonian Empire, an empire that was totally lacking in any spiritual or moral values. And we saw how thick those walls were. How did they do it? How did that happen? Well, it is said that the Persian king Cyrus diverted the Euphrates River into a nearby swamp. I mean, who knew? This lowered the level of the river so that the troops could march through the water and even get under the river gates. Clever, huh? They still wouldn't have been able to enter the city, though, because of these bronze gates, which that evening had been inexplicably unlocked. So, what was Daniel's response in all of this? Daniel wasn't interested in rewards offered by this second choice world. He rejected the status and the gifts that came with him. He was given them, but hey, they only lasted a few hours, didn't they? Whatever the value system of Babylon, he was able to get along without its approval and affirmation. Daniel drew his sense of status from another source entirely. I love that. Viv Thomas continues in his book, second choice worlds can build up phantom debts. Because we live in a place we do not want to live or have to endure pressures we do not want to endure, we start to feel that the world owes us something for all that we've been through. One of the advantages of second choice worlds is they put pressure on us to work out who we really are and where we can safely build substantial foundations for our lives. Daniel was, as he'd always been, salt and light and leaven in that culture, always aligning himself with God and not compromising. His saltiness enhanced the flavour of the culture. He was light in the darkness of an immoral nation. He was leaven in the dough. All you bread makers will know that once you put your yeast in, you can't get it out, can you? And it works in the heat. Often, the kingdom way of living becomes evident in the heat. Daniel found that, didn't he? He was leaven in a system, keeping his personal standards, and he brought change from within. What have I become in the challenges of life? In our second choice worlds, are we becoming something in the breakthroughs of life? And are people attracted by the way we bring up our children, for example, handle disappointment and illness, speak to others, rally around those in need, use our time and resources at work, cope with unemployment, support our neighbours? Are we a city on a hill in the darkness? What is our response in our second choice worlds? We can do things differently. What is the kingdom way? I was fortunate enough yesterday to spend the day on a course. And it was an early birthday present from the family. And it was a course all about natural dyeing. And who would have thought that roots and leaves and bark, natural dyes, could produce such vibrant colours? Isn't it incredible? I just wanted to bring them to show you that when God does something, it's always brilliant. Yes. His kingdom and his ways are always vibrant and brilliant, and you can't do better than that. It was such a great day. We even had one of their 52 sheep, they'd hand-clipped the fleece off, laid it all out. We picked through all the best bits. We washed it. We hung it out to dry. And then we took bits and we carded it. Anybody who's done any of this, but it was great fun. Carded it, and then I spun it. Then I made it into double ply. And then I dyed it. I mean, how cool is that? I'm going to use it on my loom, I think. But anyway, that was God's ways. Oh, don't be in any shadow of a doubt. God's ways and his kingdom ways are always the best.
Yes, yes.
How do we honour God with everything then? I wonder if we're clear in our thinking. Are we clear in our approach as to what is opposed to God and wary of joining in with it? Have I been weighed and found wanting? Gandhi is reported to have said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." Ha ha. I'm always reminded of the scales found on the walls of our justice and law courts in this country when I read this story about Belshazzar. And they represent, don't they, weighing the facts and the evidence to decide a verdict. And in our story, Belshazzar was found wanting. How are we faring? Dr. Martin Luther Jr. said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." I wonder if we can honour God by helping in some small way those who are living in no-choice worlds. Displaced people groups, homeless, slaves, street children, those who are trafficked, those living in war zones, the hungry. Amos 5:24 says, "But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream." We have a part to play in honouring God. And as it says in Micah 6:8, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. Oh, Father, stir my heart and teach me how to act justly, how to love mercy, and how to walk humbly with you today and every day. Are we aligning ourselves to God's ways? Belshazzar chose to dishonour God and was found wanting in all those three. I'm a great lover of Lectio 365, the daily devotional prayer. And a few weeks ago, Jill Webber, who does them from time to time, quoted what her daughter had said on this whole issue of justice. All we need to do is understand our belovedness. If we really knew how deeply loved we are, and if we really knew how deeply beloved everyone on the planet is, how could we not work for justice? As I said earlier, I love sash windows. I love finding out about how people live their lives, what their values are, which leads to what their principles are that they live by, and how they set their priorities, and then so how they put that into practice by their actions. On Saturdays, the Telegraph has this amazing thing where a well-known person tells you all about their Saturday. I love reading this. I mean, it's a real insight into what makes people tick and what they do and why they do things. I'm just curious. It's a window into their lives. What are our values? Our principles? Our priorities, and so our practice? I think that these will be a massive window into our lives for those around us. How do we face the challenges of life? What is the world seeing? What is my life saying? I guess especially when living in a second choice world or no choice world we find ourselves in. Maybe in the bigger issues of the world, all the injustices around us. How are we going to respond? Be a window, a light on a hill, leaven, an influencer for justice and truth, salt to change the flavour? Michael asked the question a couple of weeks ago, what legacy do we want to leave? Barney came to stay, Barney's our youngest son, and he came to stay for a weekend a few weeks ago, and he works for a charity called Hope Central, and part of his role is to help those in debt through Christians Against Poverty. And he said to me, justice is a lifestyle and not just an activity you do to make yourself feel better. You heard it from your son. He gave me a little window into his life by telling me a story of a lady who had just been to the doctors with depression. And she walked out of the surgery and down the road, and she saw this sign saying Hope Central. Well, initially she walked past, and then she thought, I need a bit of hope right now. And so she went back and she went into the hall where Hope Central are based. And Barney went to meet her and started to talk to her and discovered a bit of her story. He got a glimpse into the window of her life, and he was able to help her by finding out what benefits she was entitled to that she didn't know, and he offered her support and helped her husband, who'd just been made redundant. They have a life skills course to help you, in the way you do your life. And she then went along to an evangelistic event that they were running. And she said to him, I've never known such peace. Isn't that wonderful? Bob Pierce, the founder of World Vision International, said, let my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God. There's so much injustice, isn't there, in this world? It's just totally overwhelming. Yeah. Totally overwhelming. While we're eating plenty, having your roast chicken later, 700 million people in the world are currently suffering from hunger every day. 2.4 billion face food insecurity, and 42% of the world can't afford a healthy diet. How can we act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God? It's one step at a time. It's one person at a time, like Barney met. It is one day at a time. Mother Teresa said, I can't do a sermon without mentioning Mother Teresa. She said, we feel that what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean. It feels like that, doesn't it? But the ocean would be less because of that missing drop. At the moment, at school, we have two initiatives. Friday Food Share, where anybody can bring food, put it in a box, and anybody can take it out. And the other one is a shed to swap clothes. You can come bring your clothes, or you can take clothes. Just two small ways that we're trying to help our community who are living in their second choice or no choice world. Maybe you could get involved with CAP, Christians Against Poverty. I'm a befriender for CAP, such a privilege. You get alongside people, just get to know them, have a coffee, chat, pray, just support them as they're going through their journey of becoming debt-free. It's such a great way. Invite them to church. Open Doors. Speak to Fee, doing a fantastic job there. Write to your MP. Oh, look, I mustn't forget this one. Write to your MP. Give regularly to the food bank. Think before you buy your clothes. Is that company righteous in its dealings with employees? Do a bit of research. Be intentional. Make decisions to swap plastic for something sustainable. Take Wednesday as your World Day to pray for the nations. Do something that's a lifestyle change. So many people are living in a no-choice world right now. And we can make a difference.
Yes.
Can't we? But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways, Daniel says to Belshazzar. But I want to say to you today, but you, beloved, did honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. All we need to do is understand our belovedness. If we really knew how deeply loved we are, and if we really knew how deeply beloved everyone on the planet is, how could we not work for justice? You might be feeling that you're in I love that, so much beauty all around, isn't there? And people in our countryside. We need to look after it. If you're in a second choice world today, or maybe even a no choice, you feel like you have no options, can I encourage you to pray with someone this morning?
Yes.
In those moments that I've been in those places, having someone to pray with me and stand alongside me has given me the strength to go on. Daniel saw that, didn't he? He prayed with his mates. Deuteronomy 32 says this: I will proclaim the name of the Lord. Oh, praise the greatness of our God. He is the rock. His works are perfect, and all his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong, upright and just is he. Shall we just pray? Holy Spirit, would you come and just touch our hearts and minds? That there might be one phrase or one word that we could take away from this morning. And Holy Spirit, I pray you'd help us to know how to take the next step.
Yes.
What it is that I can do, and how my life can be a window to point people to you, Lord Jesus. We thank you that you love us so much. As we receive your love, help us to love others, I pray. Amen.